What's up, guys? It's finally time for my first Maya tutorial in a series of Maya tutorials. I'm super excited about it. It's been kind of a lot of stress getting up to this point because there's been a lot of second guessing and trying to figure out what I'm doing. But I think I'm finally ready. A couple things to know about this video and my videos going forward. These tutorials are done in Maya 2014, 15, one of those. With that said, most of the tools and the things that I go over, they generally don't change in the applications. While the applications kind of change their look and their design, and they add new tools, all of the older tools that I'm going over generally stay the same. So with that said, let's get into the first one. This is going to be just a basic overview of the Maya interface and all of the little UI elements. Nothing too crazy, but in the coming videos we'll start going over modeling, object creation, animation, lighting, rendering, everything. As I said, I want to share what I know with all of you, and if you choose to follow me and join me on this series and this journey of content creation, I would really appreciate it if you'd like the videos, throw me some comments, and as always, subscribe. So with that said, let's go. Okay guys, this is Autodesk Maya, and as I said before, it's an older version. This is actually 2014, so my mistake there. But again, the tools and the concepts and everything like that don't really change throughout the versions, so we'll just keep going here, and at some point I'll upgrade to the newer ones, but for now this is where we're at. So starting off, I opened up one of my older models that I built back when I was in college, just to give you a general idea of what it looks like. When you open Maya, you're going to get this standard gradient shaded viewport. These are all different things you can adjust and change, but we're going to keep it the way it is for now, and the tank is just kind of there to show you what it looks like when I rotate the point. Alright, so starting off, we have over here your tool menu, and these are all a bunch of different tools that you will be using in Maya. Right now I'm using the selection tool. You have a couple different options when it comes to this. For instance, the move tool allows you to move different pieces of your model around, also known as the translate tool, and that allows you to translate it in X, Y, and Z. Rotation, same concept, X, Y, Z, as well as you have more of a globe-like control, so you can rotate objects in any way you need to, but a lot of the time I recommend staying with this unless you absolutely have to move away with it, because it gets kind of complicated when you shift an object this way and you have to rotate it back. And then last but not least is the scale tool. Scale tool allows you to do exactly what it says, which is scale your object, change the size, make it smaller, make it bigger, whatever you need to do. There is also a lasso tool, which is a lasso selection tool. I don't use it very much just because it does this and it freaks out the machine. But if you ever need to lasso select a bunch of objects, that's one easy way to do it. Okay, so that lasso tool totally crashed Maya, so I reopened the file, starting over again. Down below all of your different movement tools, you have your viewport tools. These allow you to change the way that your view looks. So for instance, if you want to open up all 4 grids, it gives you all the different grids that you need to look at it from the side, from the top, from the back, from behind, or from whatever angle really you want to set it to. You have that option, as well as still being able to control your perspective view. These are really great because when you're modeling, you can actually see where your lines are lining up and where everything's kind of fitting nicely. But these views really do help get a better view on the vehicle, especially because when you're modeling in perspective, it's really not the best idea, because you can move something in a direction that looks like it's up, but really it was off to the left. And really all the other ones, they're all different in their own respective ways. This one opens up your outliner, this one opens up your animation curves, and these are all windows that at some point I will go over, but it's just good to know right now that this is where they are, this is where they're located, and then you can build some custom ones if you want to as well. Alright, so starting back from our perspective viewport, in here you have your different viewport controls. So these are some of the things like your camera options and your rendering options in the viewport. Some of the good tools that I like to remember are the shading tools, and these allow you different forms of shading however you want to view your model. Most of the time I'm just viewing it like this, unless I need to see how everything's flowing edgewise, but 90% of the time I'll leave it that way. This one turns on shading in viewport, so if you have textures assigned, if you have colors assigned, it'll show up in the viewport. A couple other ones that we've got here, your lighting allows you to see your lighting in viewport. It's not an exact representation, but it's pretty close. Shadows, and then your viewport renderer, which those you will change over here. And normally I use viewport 2.0 just because it gives you the best possible representation of what you're working with. And then a couple other tools. Ambient occlusion is one of those good ones because it does show you kind of how the shadows are working on your model, and it gives you a really nice view of what you're working with. You know, if you decide you don't like the way something is looking, you can always go back and fix it later without having to wait for a render. There are a lot of tools up here, and there are a lot of options up here, and you'll see me using them throughout this series. But each time I do use one, I will show you exactly what it does and why I'm using it. Okay, some of the most important, or one of the most important areas is in Maya is right over here. Keep in mind, Maya is a very node-based program, so you can actually grab and break things away as much as you want to. And just keep in mind, until you actually double-click it after you've broken it away, it won't return to its original spot. So over here, these are a couple of the most important tools in Maya. Your channel box is one of the more important ones because it kind of shows you each of your object's properties. So I selected the tread plate, and you can see all of the properties on this thing are pretty much set to 0 aside from the scale, just because scale needs to be at 1 to be original size. But you can see if I decide to scale the object, these numbers change, and they're all uniform as long as you're using that center controller, or they change as you use the outer handles as well. Now this is the channel box and layer editor. There isn't too much going on in here, but if you're trying to figure out why an object is rotated weird or it moved and you can't find it, this is going to be one of your places to check, especially when you have your outliner open, because you can open up your outliner, select the object, and then figure out where it is and then zero it back out and it'll come home. This guy is the attribute editor. This is kind of the control panel, if you will, of your object. So everything that's assigned to this object, from the material to whatever you're working with, is going to be controlled through here. And right now this just has a base material, so when I adjust that base material, it changes everything. This is where a lot of the fine-tuning controls are for each one of your objects, each one of your lights, each one of your cameras, whatever you're working with. And these generally follow the same structure, but usually the options are different depending on what you're working with, because when you're working with an object, it's going to look a lot different than when you're working with a light. Okay, and this last box is going to be your tool settings. Your tool settings pop up over on the left-hand side of the screen, and these allow you to adjust the different configurations that you can work with your tools. If you want to change your access to work with object or world or local or normal, there's a host of things in here. A lot of people use different things like soft select. Not normally my favorite because I'm used to working with hard surface models, which this model right here would be considered a hard surface model, but I've been working to kind of get out of that and work more with organic shapes and things like that. But this is where you're going to control all of your tool settings, and normally I'm not in there, but every once in a while I'll pop it open, and as I said, each time I'll go through what each one does. Okay, moving up even further, you have all of Maya's different menus. There are a couple in here that you're not going to have on your standard installation. 3D Connection is one of them because I use a 3D Connection mouse. But most of these are standard, and these are just another way to access the same tools that are in here in these tabs, as well as some other extended tools. And a lot of settings. There are a lot of settings in here that I will end up using or going through or changing, just because Maya is a monstrosity of a program. There are so many things to do and so many things to learn. And that's part of the reason why I'm starting this series, because there's a lot to learn, but there's not a lot of information out there on how to learn it, or if you're looking for specific topics, it's not out there. But we'll go over these as we move on. Each one's different, and there's a drop down here which makes it all even more confusing, but when you change this drop down, it changes all your menus up. So these give you more direct access to every single tool that you can possibly think of using. They're all up here and they're all opened up through this little drop down menu. Okay, and then dropping down here, this is kind of the bread and the butter of the animation end of things. This is your timeline. Your timeline is where you adjust your keyframes, you set your keyframes, you set your frames. Everything that you do animation-wise is going to be done in this timeline. And a couple of controls include the ability to scroll through how many frames you have set up in your project, and you can set up as many as you want to. I think the most I've ever worked in is a 400 frame scene, but this scroller allows you to either scroll across what you have set up, and it goes 1 to 24 because the limit over here is 24, or if you wanted to, you can just view the entire timeline by changing that to 48. You have your total maximum number of frames and your total maximum number of viewed frames, and that's exactly what these three little areas mean. Over here you have your play controls. You can either play through the frame sets or you can play reverse through the frame sets, whatever you decide you need for the moment. Sometimes playing back in reverse is a good tool to understand what your animation is doing and why it looks fake or why it doesn't look right. You can also manually scrub the timeline, which I find myself doing this the most because I'm able to just grab it and say scroll through frame 20 to 30 or whatever I want to do. You can set up your auto keyframe. I honestly never use this, but this kind of automatically creates keyframes when you move things. It just makes a mess of things. And then your animation preferences, which this is kind of a menu I didn't want to show yet, just because this is literally all of the preferences within Maya that you can adjust, including like things like the view cube. I don't use the view cube. I think it was a terrible invention. And it's not even working right now. But normally when you install Maya for the first time, you get this stupid cube up here, and it allows you to toggle through your different views. And then this is your script editor. So by clicking this button right down here, you've got your script. You can see everything that Maya is doing, as well as creating your own scripts through here. And there you guys have it, a very basic overview of the Maya viewport and the menu system and all of the different little tools. Every single one of these tutorials is going to be different, and it's going to cover different tools, and it does not make sense to make an entire video dedicated to just Maya menus and subsets and everything like that, because in the end you're not going to remember or absorb all of that until you're actually using it and actively working with it. So in the next tutorial we'll start actually creating objects and doing some different things in Maya and getting used to how the viewport works and how moving things in 3D actually works. So that's it for this one, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you decide that you want to subscribe, and if you do, please drop a like. Hit me up with a comment if there's something you want to see that I haven't created yet. If there's a burning question that you have that wasn't answered in this video, shoot me a message or leave a comment. I do my best to watch them and respond when I do get them. But again, that's it for this one, and I'll see you guys in the next one.